All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and we're here today to break down the Washington Commanders' biggest remaining needs. And of course, we're going to go in order of what's the biggest need all the way down to probably the smallest. But you'll see why I have the one last that I do, because it's technically not the smallest need, but you'll see when we get there for my explanation behind it. But we're here to break down all of the top needs, and of course, we're trying to see where for all of these needs we could potentially find some help in both free agency and the draft for each of these positions of need. And I feel like a lot of y'all are going to probably be surprised where I have these ranked, but you'll see where I'm coming from once I break these situations down. I'm super excited. I'm working on like a full cap space update video to talk about how much cap space we have left at this point. And I did see the Jeremy Reeves signing, so I'm working on that video as well. But we're focused on this video first. I wanted to go ahead and get this out the way because the legal tampering period technically starts before I'm probably even going to get this video out there at 4 p.m. Eastern time. It's 3:40 p.m. right now, so I'm probably going to look crazy within like the next hour. But either way, I wanted to go ahead and get this video done. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I promise I'm keeping y'all updated on every little thing that the Commanders have going on. Every little thing. It doesn't matter. Even when we signed a long snapper, video. We signed a kicker, video. If there's a rumor that we're interested in somebody, video. So stay tuned for all of that, man. Keep y'all updated on every little thing. This is your one-stop shop for everything Commanders, and I can't wait for us to be done with everything for agency so we can start to focus on the draft, film sessions, mock drafts, positional rankings, biggest needs, and all of that type of stuff. So stay tuned for all of that. But let's go ahead and get to this right here. Let's get it. Shouts out to my dogs. We got George over there with a huge donation to the Cash App last night at around 9 p.m. I really appreciate you for that. And then also, shouts out to my boy, Red Black Indian. He wants me to change his name in the Pro Bowl sponsors. I got you, man. I definitely am going to change that. Thanks. Shouts out to you for donating to me, a big time donation just to tell me that, man. That's love. So, man, I really appreciate both of y'all for that. And shouts out to Grant Paulson because I agree with his point in his tweet here before we even get into these needs. He pointed out the fact that the Commanders aren't spending big money or seemingly trying to land future all-pros necessarily. Their plan is clear. Acquire starters, upgrade weak positions, and add talent at reasonable rates. But let's be realistic about this haul. Washington hasn't swung big, and they're putting the ball in play. And I completely agree. That's literally what they're doing right now. And also, before we start to dive into these needs, I'm ignoring quarterback. We're not even going to discuss quarterback because we will more than likely be selecting Jayden Daniels or Drake May, number 2 overall in the first round of the NFL draft coming up in a month and a half. My boy at MV Scouting brings up a great point, and this is a point that I brought up earlier when we signed Marcus Mariota. We all should have realized the Colts were drafting Anthony Richardson when they signed Gardner Minshew, and the Panthers were taking Bryce Young because they signed Andy Dalton. It shouldn't have even been a thought at that point. You bring in a veteran quarterback and you're potentially in range to get a franchise quarterback in the draft, you're more than likely going franchise quarterback in the draft. Look at the Denver Broncos and the Vikings and the moves they've made in free agency with their veteran quarterbacks. They're doing whatever it takes to get whatever quarterback that maybe they just wait till a quarterback falls to them, but they're taking potential quarterback, at least taking a chance on a potential franchise quarterback in the upcoming draft. And with us having a number 2 overall pick, it pretty much just seals the deal. So again, we're not even going to discuss quarterback in this video. Let's move on to our official biggest need. We're going from biggest need to smallest need. We're going to go in that order. And left tackle is clearly and far ahead our biggest remaining need right now. It's the only position where I literally don't know who's going to start there. The other positions of need that we're going to talk about, yeah, at least we have some guys, and it's kind of like, you know, I would prefer to upgrade that position, but at least we have like a potential starter there. We just are potentially maybe like one injury away from being in panic mode, or maybe, you know, even the starter that's there right now isn't great, but he's all right. Whereas left tackle, I don't have any answers for you. Trent Scott? I mean, I literally have no answers for y'all right now. So let's first start with available left tackles in free agency, and then we're going to talk about the draft after that. We're going to do that with all of the position groups in this video. Again, starting with left tackle, free agency wise, I mean, we got to start with 5-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys. You got to start there. And luckily for us, it's already been reported that the Cowboys don't plan on bringing him back. But on the bad side of things, the bad news is there's also been reports saying that multiple teams are trying to get him right now. And literally probably the only reason he hasn't signed yet or agreed to terms with anybody yet is because he's probably waiting for the best offer. And Spot Track predicts him to get a deal worth somewhere around $7.4 million per year. They're actually projecting him to get like a 1-year, $7.5 million contract, basically, which would make him the 18th highest paid left tackle in the NFL. And the only reason he's not demanding double that is just because of his injury history. But honestly, for me, man, if that's literally it, I'll take it. Like, I would literally sign him to that exact contract, actually, a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Yes, please, man. He had an 83.8 Pro Football Focus overall grade and an 88.6 pass blocking grade. So overall wise, they felt like he was the 4th best tackle in all of football, with only Penei Sewell, Trent Williams, and Jordan Mailata in front of him. And man, I mean, that Jordan Mailata thing, that's probably my biggest, like, best take about a guy that, hey man, you give this guy a chance, he's gonna ball out. That's probably my very best one. And I have that same feeling about Armani Rogers. Hopefully he can stay healthy enough for him to realize it, for that to actually become a reality. But either way, they feel like Tyron Smith is the 4th best tackle in the NFL last year, even above Tristan Wirfs, Christian Darrisaw, Brandon Smith, Taylor Decker. Morgan Moses was ranked top 10, Trent Brown, Colton Miller, Lane Johnson, I mean Rashawn Slater, so many elite tackles in the NFL. Again, they felt like Tyron Smith was at worst top 5. And then when you're looking at his 89.3 pass blocking grade, they felt like that was literally the best out of the entire NFL, above every other tackle that we could ever name, including Trent Williams, Tristan Wirfs, Christian Darrisaw, Rashawn Slater, Laramie Tunsil, Jordan Mailata, all of those guys, man. Lane Johnson, Taylor Decker. They felt like Tyron Smith was the best pass blocking left tackle, well, just tackle period, out of the entire NFL last year. But, and this is a big one, you do have to worry about his injury history. And this is, I mean, granted, it's probably his only weakness, but it's a big one, man. Availability is the best ability, and ever since 2016, he's due to miss some games. He played in 13 games in each season going all the way from 2016 to 2019. So it was pretty much like the Cowboys could just expect him to miss a certain amount of games every season for 4 years in a row. Then 2020, he only played in 2 games. Then 2021, he only played in 11 games. And then in 2022, he only played in 4 games. And then technically he bounced back in 2013 and went back to that normal 13 games in a season that he's known for playing for a while, which is crazy because between 2011 and 2015, he didn't miss a single game. And then 2016, even after being voted an All-Pro and a Pro Bowler, it just seemed to go downhill from there health-wise. But again, at least between 2016 and 2019 and most recently 2023, he'll give you 13 games. But that is a problem, man, to not be able to depend on your left tackle to start every game. I mean, it's literally expected. I'm willing to put money on the fact that Tyron Smith will not be able to play a fully healthy season, or at the very least give us every game in the season. And on top of that, he's also 33 years old. So if you get Tyron Smith as your starting left tackle in free agency, first of all, you're still for sure taking tackle within the first 2 rounds. You gotta bring in a guy that you're hoping can eventually take over and start, just period. But then you also need a guy that's gonna be ready to start as soon as Tyron Smith ends up missing games, which is literally clockwork. It's expected. It seems like destiny at this point. But also, you're probably also signing another tackle in free agency very soon that's like a safe, dependable guy, like a more durable type of guy. Maybe so like way less money. But hey, man, at the end of the day, I still love him at left tackle, as in Tyron Smith. but he would not be the answer at left tackle. He would be one of the answers at left tackle this offseason. So, you kind of got to keep that in your calculations as far as like, yeah, he may be the best pass blocking tackle of all of the NFL. He's arguably the best tackle available in all of free agency right now. But if you sign him, you need to make sure that you have another guy that's ready to go in and start immediately right behind him, which immediately raises the stock and the likelihood that we bring back a Cornelius Lucas, because you're pretty much expecting Tyron Smith to miss at least a couple of games after you sign him. Now, of course, I would still love to draft the guy, and we'll get to that soon. But hey, man, I mean, I just can't help but look at the ceiling of a Tyron Smith when he is out there, which isn't like super duper rare. Again, he played in 13 games last year, and 13 games of Tyron Smith is worth $7.5 million in my opinion, to be completely honest with you. And then next up, how about former Green Bay Packers All-Pro left tackle David Bakhtiari? We're talking about 2 All-Pro tackles right here. And last year, even though he only played 55 snaps, so we're going to get to the injury part of that, because this injury history is even scarier than Tyron Smith's, at least more recently. But he had a 78.3 overall grade and 89.9 pass blocking grade this past season. So if he would have qualified as an actual tackle on the Pro Football Focus ranking system from their grades, he would have been the 17th best tackle in the NFL last year, but he only played such a small amount of games that they couldn't actually rank him as the 17th best tackle. But according to his grade, that's what he would have been over Rashawn Slater, over Laramie Tunsil, over a few really good tackles out there. And then his pass blocking grade of an 89.9 would have been #1 in the NFL, even above Tyron Smith, if he played enough snaps to qualify. Which takes me to his weakness, because it's kind of like, what's the catch? I mean, if he's that elite, why is this guy even available? Why is he potentially going for cheap? Why are the Green Bay Packers willing to move on from him? Well, they have a younger quarterback, and right now they can't play around with injury risk. Or at the very least, if you're going to do that, you need to have a tackle that's ready to step in and start immediately, and they probably don't feel like dealing with that. But if we do, just like Tyron Smith, you do have to worry about injuries with David Bakhtiari. I mean, since 2020, he played in 12 games that season, only 1 game in 2021 out for season, then in 11 games in 2022, and then last year, 2023, he only played in 1 game. Overall, throughout his career, though, it's really weird, because he's been less available than Tyron Smith these past 3 seasons, but in return, over the course of their careers, David has been more durable technically, but he's just been way worse than Tyron Smith these past 3 years as far as availability goes. Whereas Tyron Smith's availability issues start all the way back to 2016. So it's kind of like pick your injury poison here if you want to sign either of those 2 guys. But I have the same exact opinions about signing David as I do with Tyron. If you sign either one of these guys, yeah, there's an elite ceiling there, but you must be planning on bringing in another tackle in either free agency or within the first 2 rounds of this upcoming NFL draft. You need a guy that can be ready to start immediately, not even if one of those guys goes down. At this point, it's like a win. So that's why I can see why a lot of people don't even want to even give those guys any money. They wouldn't even give them a penny. They want to steer perfectly clear away from both of those guys. Now, I understand, but at least Tyron Smith, who gave the Cowboys 13 games last year, I would get him for a 1-year, $7.5 million deal. Hope that he stays healthy, but also account for the fact that he will not be able to stay healthy the entire season, and have a guy like Cornelius Lucas, you bring him back for really cheap as your backup swing tackle, and then you also go and draft a guy within the first 2 rounds. And then if you do want to go safe and available over elite left tackle, you potentially have a George Fant from the Houston Texans. He had a 63.5 overall grade and a 69.4 pass blocking grade, but a pretty bad 53.8 run blocking grade. But that's really it. Outside of like the elite guys like Tyron Smith and David Bakhtiari that are injury prone, the only thing you're left with when it comes to the more durable, safe guys, they're not as good, anywhere near as good as blockers. So you got to really pick your poison there. Elite play, but you're not going to get it all season, or you're going to get some mid all season. Which one do you want? And that's why I say I would kind of prefer to go ahead and just take the elite play for the occasional game, and then we have a guy like Cornelius Lucas ready to step up if necessary, if the guy that we take in the draft isn't ready. And again, I would also go heavy in tackle in the draft, like first 2 rounds type of thing. And you can honestly argue, I'm not going to I'm not going to play around. I'm not even going to avoid it. Charles Leno is probably the best safe left tackle available on the market. Like, honestly, literally. I mean, he's better to me, than a George Fant. And you can argue outside of Charles Leno, that's the best safe option left out there. Because either the guys are elite and injury prone, or they're just not that good. Charles Leno is probably like the best middle that's available, to be completely honest with you, especially if you look at the stats, the Pro Football Focus grades, they match up with my opinion on that. But if the Commanders cut Charles Leno as quickly as they did before we even got to the legal tampering period, that lets me know that they're probably aiming for better or elite, because we have plenty of cap space. Cap space is not the problem. Cutting Charles Leno didn't save us enough that it would have stopped us from getting any of the free agents that we've already signed. So they must be aiming for a Tyron Smith or a David Bakhtiari. I'm assuming, because you don't cut arguably the best safe left tackle out there available in free agency just to go out there and get a worse safe tackle. I promise y'all, we sign a guy like George Fant, y'all are going to be complaining about him more than you complained about Charles Leno last year. I can promise you that. And those are probably the two best available guys outside of Tyron Smith and David Bakhtiari, who are like the healthier guys. So I'm assuming that they're heavily probably pursuing like a Tyron Smith or a David Bakhtiari, or probably already planning to do whatever it takes to get a first round tackle, even after taking quarterback number 2 overall. And speaking of that, would y'all be willing to take our 2 second round picks, 36th and 40th overall, and trade them away to move back up into the mid or late first round to get a starting left tackle then? Because honestly, that may be what it takes at this point. And even if we did, just say we did actually want to do that, and we want to take a look at some potential left tackles in the draft that may be available later. You have Tylanese Fuaga, even though I consider him more of a right tackle, so we'll talk about that when we get to the right tackle part of this video. Amarius Mims, he's only really played right tackle his entire time at Georgia, but with his elite traits, I project him to be an elite starting caliber left tackle, like literally an all-pro type of guy once he's able to stay healthy and fix a lot of his raw traits. Then you also have Washington tackle Troy Fatanu. You have Tyler Guyton, maybe from Oklahoma. You have Jordan Morgan. You have a few options out there that may be available somewhere between the mid first round to like early second round where we end up picking. So those are some options right there for a potential left tackle. Of course, ideally, we would love to get like a Joe Alt or Olu Fashanu or JC Latham. But with us taking quarterback number 2 overall, presumably, we're not going to be in range to get either of those guys, and 2 second round picks aren't going to be enough to trade up high enough to get one of those guys. So go ahead and already accept the fact that we're probably aiming for a guy like my boy Amarius Mims, which I would be extremely excited about, because y'all already know how I feel about him, man. He has the highest ceiling of any tackle in this draft class, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get to right tackle. Either way, next up, I would say even after signing Panthers linebacker Frankie Luvu, linebacker is easily, to me, our second biggest need remaining, especially with Cody Barton, Khalid Hudson, and David Mayo being unrestricted free agents that we will more than likely not bring back. And I also don't want to bring back either of those guys. Maybe Khalid Hudson for extremely cheap, but that's it. And then also on top of the fact that Jamin Davis is basically going from being forced to be a Mike linebacker to now Dan Quinn is like, no, we're not even going to do that to him. He projects far more favorably in a more like Micah Parsons role, coming off of the edge, attacking the quarterback way more than he's previously done so far in his career. So we're technically losing another Mike linebacker. And Frankie Luvu is our only, really at this point, full-time off-ball starting caliber linebacker that we even have on roster right now. And he's primarily going to be focused on stopping the run, playing and coverage and things like that. But Pro Football Focus graded him as the best off-ball linebacker at rushing the passer and getting after the quarterback. So he's probably going to do some of that as well. So he'll probably be all over the place. So we still need 1 or 2 off-ball linebackers at this point. So we probably need to sign another linebacker or 2 in free agency, and of course also draft one as well. Like get one at least within the first 4 rounds of the draft. So starting with the free agent linebacker options, what about Devin White? I know he looked like one of the best linebackers in the NFL just a couple of years ago, but since then he's fallen off a cliff. But he is only 26 years old, and he would fit the theme of a lot of the signings that we've made so far in free agency, getting guys at around like 26, 27 years old and banking on the fact that they're probably entering their prime and getting excellent value out of them. But speaking of value, right now SpotTrack has him estimated to get a $10.7 million deal per year with his next contract, and that's way too pricey for me. With as bad as he's looked these past couple of years, I'm not giving him that. Granted, there's still probably loads of potential and talent in there that can be coached out of him. I mean, Ken Norton Jr. is our linebackers coach. Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. our defensive-minded coach. Joe Wood Jr. specifically our defensive coordinator. I think we could potentially get closer to Devin White of 2 years ago than what Devin White has been these past couple of years. I'm not sure if he'll ever get back to his old form, though, when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers won that Super Bowl. But you never know. I would take a risk on him, but not for anything near $10.7 million a year, man. I'm perfectly fine on that. And then also, maybe they still pursue 34-year-old Bobby Wagner. Because like I said a few days ago, at 33 years old, Bobby Wagner still played like a top linebacker in the NFL last year. He was ranked 7th out of all linebackers according to Pro Football Focus with his 82.4 overall grade. Again, 7th out of the entire NFL at 33 years old, above Frankie Louvu, the guy that we just signed that we all love, arguably the best signing we made all free agency, above Devin Lloyd, above Roquan Smith, Bobby Okereke, TJ Edwards, Ernest Jones, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Fosadé Olakun. I mean, so many elite line. Again, 7th out of all linebackers in the NFL, dog. So if you could promise me somehow you could go into the future and tell me that you can get 2023 33-year-old Bobby Wagner in 2024 at 34 years old, then it's a super yes for me. Like, please sign him immediately, especially if he's willing to sign for something slightly cheaper than the 1 year $5.5 million cap hit deal that he had for the Seattle Seahawks last year. If we could get him for a cheap 1 year $5 million or slightly less dollar deal for the 2024 season, and you can also tell me that he will be his 2023 self in 2024, I feel like that would arguably be one of our best signings of this entire free agency if we were to go do that. I'm telling you, man, Bobby Wagner still has a lot left in the tank. And also, are we willing to try to give Isaiah Simmons, that whole experiment, another chance in the year of 2024? I don't know, man. I loved him coming out of the draft. Absolutely loved him. And I haven't had the time to really go watch his tape on his play with the teams he's been on, including most recently the Giants. I don't know what's been going on with him. He had so much talent, but even at the end of the day with the Giants last year, he had a 68.9 overall grade, which isn't bad, but he was bad in run defense at 54.7. He was terrible in pass rush at 44.1, but we just simply won't ask him to do that, so ignore that. So overall grade 68.9, run defense grade at 54.7, and an elite 82.7 coverage grade. If you're looking at coverage grade amongst NFL linebackers last year, he would have been 8th above Bobby Okereke, also on the Giants. You know, the Giants had 2 top 9 graded coverage linebackers, man. I really think they're going to miss their boy Don Winkle, who was their defensive coordinator last year. I don't think they realized how good they had it. But on top of that, he was a better coverage linebacker, according to Pro Football Focus, to Fred Warner, then Dre Greenlaw, then Ivan Pace Jr., Anthony Walker Jr., Deion Jones, TJ Edwards, Patrick Queen, Jerome Baker, Quan Alexander, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, Fosadé Okun, Jordan Hicks, just the name, Levante Davis, Zach Cunningham, our Frankie Louvu, Drew Tranquil. So say if you bring in a guy like an Isaiah Simmons for very cheap potentially, and again, another guy that's not very old, just now entering, what is he about to be? Like 26 years old? Yeah, he's like 25 now. He'll be 26 sometime during the season. You bring him in, and hopefully he's entering his prime, assuming so. To pair him with a guy like Frankie Louvu, who will do all of the dirty work, could actually really succeed for us, man. Jamin Davis primarily going after the quarterback, but still doing some off-ball stuff, stopping the run as a will linebacker, going in coverage occasionally. Then you have Frankie Louvu doing all of the above, but he's going to be like our primary run stopper, our quarterback of the defense, green dot on the helmet, coverage, stopping the run, and going after the quarterback because he's elite at that. And then you can have Isaiah Simmons focused on more so coverage, but also some stopping the run as well. And with Frankie Louvu next to him, you know how much easier it would be for him to stop the run because Frankie Louvu is going to handle a lot of that. And all you got to do is basically compliment him. We're not going to look at you like how the Giants kind of looked at you and was hoping that you could be one of the primary run stoppers. You could come here and be like the secondary run stopper. If anything, compared to Jamin Davis, the third run stopper. And I feel like he could excel in a role like that where he will be primarily focused on coverage. And he could literally be like a tight end eraser, a running back eraser. And we need that. Jamin Davis showed flashes last year, and I like Frankie Louvu in coverage, but Isaiah Simmons, if we were to sign him, would immediately be our best coverage linebacker the day that we signed him. I think that would be a great complement of abilities amongst those three linebackers right there. And when you start going down the list of available free agent linebackers, you start to realize that there's a lot of good names out there, especially if you've already signed a really good Mike linebacker, run-stopping linebacker, like a Frankie Louvu, who's already on your team that can handle a lot of the dirty work to allow guys like a Justin Simmons or some of these other good coverage linebackers that are available out there on the market that don't want to handle that type of stuff all of the time. So signing Frankie Louvu basically gives us the flexibility to sign different types of linebackers rather than just the super duper run stopping guard pancaking linebacker that we've been looking for years. Now that we found that in Frankie Louvu, we can go get a guy like Isaiah Simmons and allow him to do what he does best here. And then you also potentially have another coverage linebacker like a Zach Cunningham. But he actually was pretty good for the Eagles last year. He had a 69.4 overall grade, a 70.7 run defense grade, and a coverage grade of 69.5. I think that's a perfect compliment to a Frankie Louvu and a Jamin Davis right there. So maybe you want to go get him. And then also, what happened to Shaq Leonard, man? Wasn't he just one of the best linebackers in the NFL for the Colts just like 2 years ago? Now, I do remember him being fairly injury prone, but maybe he's cheap again? I would be willing to give him a chance like the Eagles gave him last year on a $1.5 million 1-year deal. I will for sure give Shaq Leonard that just to see, just to give him that opportunity. But between Zach Cunningham and Isaiah Simmons, hey man, give me both of them. Please, I'll take easily both of those guys in our linebacker core. I'm not going to lie. But the draft also has some interesting linebackers as well. If you were to only sign one more linebacker in free agency, say you sign like an Isaiah Simmons or a Zach Cunningham, y'all already know I want to get Peyton Wilson really bad. And I still feel like even with Frankie Louvu, Jamin Davis, and say for this scenario, Isaiah Simmons or Zach Cunningham, I would still want to go get linebacker within one of the first 3 rounds, to be completely honest with you. To me, Peyton Wilson is easily a first-round linebacker talent, but he's probably going to make it to the 2nd or 3rd round, literally only because of his injury history. But then again, you never know because he dispelled any doubt about his recovery from his injuries with the elite combine performance that he put on. First of all, he ran the fastest 40 time out of all linebackers at the combine, and this guy's 6'3", almost 6'4", closer to 6'4" than 6'3", 233 pounds. And he ran a 4.43 40-yard dash, which was again the best out of any linebacker, even guys that are way smaller than him that were at the combine. He had a 9.8 RAS raw athletic score because he had good size technically according to the measurements there. He had good explosion and then elite, like superstar elite speed. So, hey, man, I would be willing to take a risk on a Peyton Wilson even after we signed a guy like Zach Cunningham to add to what we already have in Jamin Davis and Frankie Louvu. But that's just how much I feel like linebacker is a need for us right now. No more will Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr., especially how they got gashed up directly up the middle against the Green Bay Packers in that playoffs game, which was really the catalyst for how much they got eaten up for big plays against the Green Bay Packers in the playoff game that they lost, where it was like really embarrassing because they were getting eaten up so bad in the middle of the field. They didn't have a true Mike linebacker like a Frankie Louvu or just a really good off-ball linebacker core, that they were getting ate up so bad in the middle that they had to use a lot of their resources to pretty much stack the box to try to combat that, to try to counter that, and then that made them susceptible to big plays. And then if you have a guy like Frankie Louvu and a Zach Cunningham and a Jamin Davis running after the quarterback like a Jordan Love while he's scrambling, he wouldn't have been able to make a lot of those big off-schedule scramble plays where he's running running around for 7 seconds and then finds a receiver 40 yards down the field. So if anybody has learned their lesson and knows that having a strong off-ball linebacker core, not just like an outside linebacker like a Michael Parsons, but an off-ball linebacker, kind of like how Dallas Cowboys had Sean Lee a few years ago, if anybody understands that, it is Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr., because they have been scarred from that experience they had against the Green Bay Packers last year. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do heavily pursue somebody like a Zach Cunningham or an Isaiah Wilson. I would love that. And again, like I already threw out there, let's go ahead and get Peyton Wilson in the draft as well. And don't forget about Bobby Wagner out there. Also, at this point, I honestly feel like corner is probably our third biggest need. That's what we're going to talk about next. And fit-wise, let's start with free agency. Stephon Gilmore is actually a great fit, and of course he would be a big boost to this defense with him coming from Dallas with Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr., so there's some familiarity right there. They already know exactly how to use him. He already knows how they want things done. That would already immediately bring a certain floor to our defense, and I would be very excited about that. This guy didn't win Defensive Player of the Year as a cornerback just a few years ago for nothing. Now, granted, Terry McLaurin got the better of him in that game, I remember, in Indianapolis, but still, man, that's still a really good corner, bro. And this would allow, most importantly, Emmanuel Forbes to play an interception hunting role like a Deron Bland did last year. And then you have the safe risk-averse corner that's pretty much just blanketing receivers like a Stephon Gilmore. And not a lot of corners in the NFL have the length like a Stephon Gilmore. I mean, Benjamin St-Juste does, but he's not Stephon Gilmore. We clearly saw that last year. And even though I do like Benjamin St-Juste, I wouldn't take the risk. I would still bring in a Stephon Gilmore that could easily start opposite of Emmanuel Forbes, and again allow Emmanuel Forbes to do what he did best in college, where he set a record for interceptions at Mississippi State before he came out of the NFL, and then allow him to get back to that play style. And literally, I mean, Stephon Gilmore comes over with Dan Quinn and Joe Wood Jr. Technically, if anything, Emmanuel Forbes is the one that's taking Deron Bland's place more than like Stephon Gilmore taking Benjamin St-Juste's, because this is potentially going to be very similar to the Cowboys defense that they ran last year, and Stephon Gilmore just makes too much sense there. And again, it would allow Emmanuel Forbes to be all interception hunted and taking risks like a Trevon Diggs or like a Deron Bland did last year. And then Stephon Gilmore is projected to get a 1-year, $11 million deal on the market. I'm not necessarily sure if I'm willing to give him that much money, but if he's willing to take like half of that, I will be more than happy to bring in a Stephon Gilmore. Please, man, please raise the floor of what we potentially have in this DB group. We have a lot of young talent. We have a lot of ceiling, but I would like to bring in a guy that we know for a fact is going to be able to take a wide receiver out of a game for the most part. Emmanuel Forbes, I don't think will ever be that guy. He's going to be the Trevon Diggs and the Deron Bland, where he's going to give up big plays, but he's also going to make big plays. How about we have just at least one corner on roster that we know can cover the more elite receivers of the NFL? And then also, you have older great corners outside of Stephon Gilmore, like an Xavier Howard or a Tre'Davious White. And honestly, fit-wise, between the two, Xavier Howard probably is the best fit for our aggressive corner play style under Joe Wood Jr. And also, Xavier has been far more durable between the two since 2020. But at the same time, either of those guys, I don't see as pursuing any of them, especially if they're not willing to take an extremely cheap contract, which I highly doubt they take. And also with them aging it the way they are, I feel like if they're going to go with the aging older corner, it's going to be a Stephon Gilmore, who they literally just schemed up to be very successful for them last year. Why would they want to go through that whole process of bringing in a new guy and trying to learn how to get them to fit their scheme and how they want things ran, their certain coverages and things like that? If you're going to go older corner, Stephon Gilmore makes the most sense by far. But then, when you're also talking about draft, I'm definitely expecting us to pursue corners sometime within like the first 4 rounds of the draft, in my opinion. And there's a lot of talent in this draft, man. I mean, you know me, Georgia Bulldog Kamari Lassiter. I would love to get him. If he's available somewhere in like the second, doubt it, but 3rd round, I would sprint to the podium to get him, man. I'm swearing by Kamari Lassiter. Y'all will just see. I mean, I know a lot of people consider me a homer and think I'm biased. You'll see about Kamari Lassiter. Don't even Worry about it. Then you have Cam Hart, who the Commanders have shown interest in, and he may even make it to like the 3rd, maybe 4th round. So there's that. You have Josh Newton. You have Elijah Jones. I mean, Kalen King. You have some interesting corners later in this draft when you start to get to like the 3rd and 4th round and things like that. So, hey, man, stay tuned for that. But I would honestly, even if you did get a Stephon Gilmore, I would still take corner somewhere like within the first 4 rounds, to be completely honest with you. And then next up, I feel like both tight end and safety is still areas that I would love to upgrade, but I'm talking about both of them at the same time because I believe that we will upgrade these positions in the draft far more likely than free agency. Maybe even like 4th round at the latest for both positions, maybe. Because Zach Ertz is a good signing, nice signing, but he doesn't fix the Commanders tight end position at all. It doesn't stop you from taking a tight end in the draft, even with all of the young talent we already have here, because especially with everybody but John Bates having injury histories, we definitely still need a tight end in this draft. And then safety-wise, I love Jeremy Chin being brought in and added to Quan Martin, Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, and those guys, but that's still not enough in my opinion. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we're still pursuing like a Justin Simmons in free agency, but he may be too expensive. So to be realistic, I'm assuming we'll add another very talented safety within the first 4 rounds of the draft, not in free agency. And I'm assuming safety-wise, probably 3rd round. So again, the reason I'm addressing tight end and safety at the same time is because I feel like both of those positions will probably more than likely, like far more likely, be addressed in the draft than free agency compared to other positions of need where I can kind of at least see 1 or 2 guys that we may pursue in free agency. Those 2, outside of Jason Simmons at safety, I'm almost sure willing to put money on the fact that if we sign anybody notable, not just some random veteran depth piece guy, if we sign anybody notable who even has a slight chance of being a starter for us, it's gonna be a guy in the draft. So you know me, man. You know I'm really high on my Georgia Bulldog, Javon Bullard, but you also have Cameron Kitchens from Miami. I think he's a big sleeper there. You may be able to get him later. Speaking of Miami, you have James Williams. You have another Georgia Bulldog and Tyke Smith. You have Renardo Green from Florida State, Cole Bishop. I mean, there's some guys out there, man. You have Malik Mustafa. Some people are fans of Josh Proctor. Maybe he'll be there, available that late. Omar Brown, Kenny Logan Jr. There's some names out there for later in the draft. And then tight end wise, I mean, I'm going to skip over my Georgia dog, Brock Bowers. We're not even going to discuss that. And then maybe Jatavion Sanders is in play in the 2nd round, or one of those early 2nd round picks that we have, if we do address tackle in free agency, maybe. But I just don't think, I think with tackle being such a huge need, we're probably not going to address tight end till maybe like 3rd or 4th round, maybe even 5th round. So hopefully Cade Stover from Ohio State, y'all know that's one of my favorites. Maybe he'll be available later. Maybe like a Ben Sinnott. I would love to get him later in the draft, maybe like 4th round. I feel like he comes with a very high floor. Theo Johnson comes with a ridiculous ceiling. He had, I think, the highest RAS score out of any tight end out of this draft class. Just ridiculously elite athlete. Absolutely killed the combine. You could argue he had one of the best combine performances regardless of position all around. Of course, Xavier Worthy broke the 40-time record, but like Theo Johnson killed it every way possible. Agility, speed, explosion, broad jump, vertical jump, 40-time, agility drills, all of that. Like, he killed everything. So maybe that's a guy you look up later in the draft. Jaheim Bell may even be available all the way going into like the 4th, maybe even 5th round, maybe from Florida State. Maybe you look at him later. So we have some options at tight end to add some talent. So I'm pretty sure, again, just like safety, we'll more than likely address that in the draft, far more likely than we are to address it in free agency. With a guy, again, I want to emphasize a guy that could potentially start. I'm not saying we just sign some random tight end to come be a camp body or a random safety that's going to compete as like a depth player in fighting for a roster spot on the 53-man roster. I'm talking about, like I said with the other positions, when I'm talking about left tackle, linebacker, I'm talking about signing guys that are coming here to start. With tight end and free safety, or any type of safety really, I'm not expecting us to get a guy of that caliber, those position groups in free agency, more so the draft. And then next up, even though Andrew Wiley admittingly played better in the second half of last season than most people probably didn't notice, I'm still not too sure about him. I'm not gonna lie. It may be, yeah, he can start week 1, but I'm hoping we bring in somebody to eventually start sometime later in the season. That's just my personal opinion. So when you're taking a look at right tackles in free agency, if you just want to straight up cut Andrew Wiley or just completely demote him into a backup role, you have Trent Brown from the Patriots. And honestly, man, he's arguably the most well-rounded offensive lineman available in free agency right now. Left tackle, right tackle, interior offensive line, no matter which way you look at it, Trent Brown is probably the most well-rounded tackle available in free agency. He's probably going to demand the most money because of it. Even though Spot Track has his market value at $7.1 million per year, I'm actually pretty shocked by that because he's going to be 31 by the time training camp even starts. But still, man, this guy had an 80.2 overall grade, a 72.8 pass blocking grade, and an 80.7 run blocking grade. And this is also a guy that, unlike Tyron Smith and David Bakhtiari, is durable. Now, he did miss some games in 2023, but he played in all 17 games of 2022. But last year, he played in 11 games, technically only started 8. So he's like a weird case of like, yeah, there's an injury history there, but it's not as bad as Tyron Smith. But at the same time, Tyron Smith did play in more games last year than Trent Brown. But overall, Trent Brown has missed less games than a David Bakhtiari and Tyron Smith. It just seems like no matter what you do, any of the good tackles that are worth anything that are available right now are probably only available because of their injury histories. So you're going to have to, if you want a good tackle that's better than Charles Leno, like I explained earlier, you're going to have to take a guy that has injury history because outside of that, Charles Leno is easily the best safe tackle available. I know a lot of people don't want to admit it, but he is the best thing out there. If you want a durable, you know he's going to play the majority of games in the season guy. And again, Trent Brown is injury prone, but he's not as injury prone as Tyron Smith or David Bakhtiari. So that's like a safer option, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him super safe like a Charles Leno. But he is a better blocker. Don't get it confused, man. Tyron Smith, David Bakhtiari, and Trent Brown, when healthy, are easily better tackles than Charles Leno. But my point is, if you're trying to avoid injury-prone tackles with an injury history, Charles Leno is literally probably the best you can do in free agency. And we cut that guy early for a reason. So they're probably, again, like I said earlier, shooting for more elite but injury-prone than the safe guy like a Charles Leno. And then when it comes to right tackles in the draft, I mean, Talise Fuanga from Oregon State dominated at right tackle. Some people are even projecting him to move to left tackle. But if you're going to get him, you're probably going to have to move up pretty far in the first round because I think he's going somewhere in the teens. And then Amarius Mims, I have no idea how far he'll make it in the draft. And he's only played right tackle, even though I project him to be literally like an all-pro left tackle. If you wanted to bring him in and start him at right tackle in the beginning, you can maybe do that, especially if you go get like a Tyron Smith at left tackle. Maybe you draft Amarius Mims late first round, you trade up into the late first, or maybe he makes it to the early second, and then you take him there. He starts at right tackle for you over an Andrew Wiley once he's ready. And then say if Tyron Smith gets hurt, then Andrew Wiley takes over at right tackle. Amarius Mims is just starting left tackle for the next 10 plus years, because again, I think he has a Trent Williams ceiling, literally. And then I guess Troy Fautanu, even though some people have him like ranked as the 6th best tackle, I see him easily going somewhere in the middle of the first round. I don't think he'll be in range for us. You never know. But you also maybe have a guy like a Jordan Morgan or Patrick Paul, Graham Barton that you can maybe get as a right tackle early second round. We'll see, man. But just to go back to Amarius Mims, man, I stand by the fact that he has the highest ceiling of any tackle in this class. Any right tackle, left tackle, I don't care what you say. And I would argue he has the highest ceiling of any tackle I've seen in years coming out of the draft. You can't watch his tape against Ohio State, mind you, his first real start as a tackle in college, and think that that's not one of the single best blocking college games of recent memory. There's no way. And again, I like Talise Fuanga a lot, but Amarius Mims did it against better competition. Only problem is that Mims is coming back from a pretty big injury. He's not injury prone, but he's coming back from a big injury, and he lacks college starts because of it. So there's naturally still some rawness in his game, but I swear by Amarius Mims, man. And I'm not swearing by every Georgia Bulldog, but he's one of the guys I'm putting my name next to. Come back to me later on. The same way I felt about Jordan Mailata when he was this unknown, undrafted free agent type of guy coming from rugby is the same way I feel about Amarius Mims. And if anything, I feel like Amarius Mims actually projects better than him. So, hey, man, just come back to me in a couple of years and let me know how good Amarius Mims looks. Whatever team he ends up going to, hopefully not an NFC East division rival, because I might shed a tear. And then lastly, we definitely need some receivers. And honestly, I feel like between this very deep receiver draft and the fact that there's still a lot of solid wide receiver free agency options, I'm very confident that we'll probably end up getting a good receiving group by the time free agency and the draft is all said and done. But I would argue that, honestly, receiver is a pretty big need right now. Like, especially with Curtis Samuel more than likely leaving in free agency. I'm only talking about receiver last in this video, only because I'm very confident that we can bring in some good receivers within the next couple of months for reasons I've already explained, between the draft being very deep, this free agency class being very deep. But honestly, you can argue that receiver is probably our biggest need after left tackle, linebacker, and maybe corner. I feel like receiver and corner are kind of like on the same level a little bit. Maybe receiver is right after corner, but receiver is definitely one of our 4 biggest needs at the very least. But again, the only reason I'm talking about it last is because I'm not worried about it. We have so many options in free agency. We have so many options in this extremely deep draft class, arguably one of the deepest draft classes of all time at receiver. So that's the only reason, again, I'm talking about it last. So you have Mike Williams, who just got released from the Chargers. And remember, Anthony Lynn was his head coach for the Chargers when they drafted Mike Williams in the first round. And we need a big body receiver. I've been screaming get a good quality big body receiver for years now. But he has to be cheap, man. Especially cheaper than the $20 million per year that he was making in his last contract with the Chargers. I'm not giving him nowhere near that. Plus, he's 30 years old. So I still think that he may have a couple of years in him of high-level play. But that's still really up there for a receiver. $20 million a year for a 30-year-old receiver. And with the draft being so deep a receiver, I doubt the Commanders even think about signing a free agent receiver for anything significant, honestly, especially for a guy with an injury history like Mike Williams. So the only way I see us potentially pursuing him is if we can get him for like way less than what he was making with the Chargers, like maybe 5, at worst $7 million per year type of thing. But you also have a Calvin Ridley, who's still not even 30 years old yet. He's 29, and he was really good for the Jaguars last year. I mean, really good. He looked like why the Falcons really missed him before he ended up in that gambling situation. I mean, he was tied for 7th out of the entire NFL wide receivers in receiving touchdowns with 8, man. He's a really good receiver, man. He still has a lot of talent left in him. If you could get him potentially for really cheap, I'm cool with it. But he's projected to get $17.5 million per year right now. I'm too cool on that. I will gladly take a draft receiver over that. And then there's also Hunter Renfrow, who just got cut by the Raiders today. Sign him potentially for an extremely cheap team-friendly deal, maybe like a 1-year prove-it deal type of thing, like a just-for-now deal that we can make sure we have a certain floor in the receiver room, a guy that we know that can contribute right now, and then we wait until the guys that we potentially draft to get better. And then also, of course, you have some aging all-stars. I mean, I don't think any other position group in the NFL has this much old talent available in it, man, because you have previous just all-stars like Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, and Odell Beckham Jr. all available right now. I'm personally good on all of those, no thanks, but and you may even want to throw like an Allen Robinson in there as well, but I'm steering clear of all of those guys, and I'm assuming Adam Peters and company will probably do the same. And then, of course, you also have, speaking of him earlier, Curtis Samuel out there too. But it doesn't seem like the Commanders are interested because he's probably asking for way too much money right now. Because Curtis Samuel will be a great fit for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. So if they do actually end up signing a veteran wide receiver, it will probably be a lesser, cheaper known name. Maybe like 1 or 2 of those type of guys, not like a certified starter. Maybe you even give Paris Campbell a chance to show why he was considered the better receiver between him and Terry McLaurin coming out of Ohio State in the same draft. Maybe we give him a chance, and with him being injury prone and things like that, and him bouncing around for team for the past couple of years. But again, going back to Curtis Samuel, he's such a perfect fit for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. I'm assuming the only reason we haven't brought him back yet is because he's asking for way too much money and neither side is budging. But again, Curtis Samuel is a beautiful fit, a match made in heaven for the Cliff Kingsbury system, man. Like, it can't really get much better than that. And then when you're looking at this deep receiver class, of course, my boy Ladd McConkey, if he makes it to like one of our second round picks, maybe, but we have bigger needs than that, so I don't see that happening. But I feel like he would be a huge steal there. I'm really afraid of Ladd McConkey ending up on the Chiefs. I'm warning y'all right now. Y'all let that happen, it's gonna be spooky season. Of course, Adonai Mitchell, another Georgia Bulldog, but technically most recently from Texas. He killed the combine, had one of the best combine performances I've seen from a wide receiver in a long time, and literally could be like a more athletic CeeDee Lamb in my opinion. That's literally my comp for him. But again, for that reason right there, I don't really see him making it to one of our later picks, one of our mid-round picks. Maybe you have a guy like a Malachi Corley, maybe he makes it to our 3rd round. I would love him. He's like a baby Deebo Samuel in my opinion. That's my comp for him. Maybe Xavier Worthy makes it later in the draft. And this is not just like a John Ross situation where all he is fast. Xavier Worthy was very productive for Texas the past 3 years. He's produced and gotten in the end zone a lot. So he's not just this speed only type of guy. And that's why I feel like he'll probably go way sooner than we'll be able to get him in like the 3rd round. Then you have Xavier Legette. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I've watched a lot of tape on him. He's really underrated, man. If he were to make it to our 3rd, maybe even 4th round, you got to take a chance on him. There's a lot of receivers, man. Malik Washington. This is an extremely deep receiver class, man. You have so much talent that's going to be there even like 4th, 5th round, man. So, hey, man, I just don't see us attacking wide receiver aggressively in free agency. I see us just waiting till maybe even the middle of the draft, and we're probably just going to end up signing some lesser-known names in free agency to just fill up spots for the wide receiver position. And then, lastly, I didn't even talk about guard or edge rusher, running back, and a few other positions because I feel like when in doubt, with the free agency signings that we've made so far, at the very least, worst case scenario, we have guys that can start and be productive in those positions. But of course, I still want us to draft guys, especially like running back in the 4th and 5th round, to potentially upgrade at those positions. And you know, I still want Darius Robinson potentially in like the 2nd round. And of course, I want some good developmental guard talent sometime later in the draft. But Adam Peters and company have made great free agency moves so far that will allow us to get upgrades at those positions because we want to in the draft rather than we need to. So I don't really expect us to continue signing guys at those positions in free agency. If anything, we'll probably just address them in the draft. You know, edge rusher again, maybe 2nd or 3rd round. Then you also have guard, maybe late, maybe running back somewhere in the middle because a lot of great running back talent is going to be available in the middle of the draft. And then also, of course, I still want to upgrade everything all up and down this roster, even beyond just left tackle, linebacker, cornerback, safety, tight end, right tackle, and wide receiver, which are our biggest needs, which I covered in this video, because we are not Super Bowl contenders right now. And until then, we are always looking to upgrade several positions on our team, if not every position. But of course, the purpose of this video was to focus on our biggest needs, not necessarily all of our needs, because technically, until you're a Super Bowl contender, you always have needs all up and down the roster. But I'm just excited. I can't wait to see what these Commanders do. Hopefully by the time I get this video out, we haven't already signed one of the guys that I just named off this list, or another team hasn't, so I don't look stupid. So let me go ahead and edit this video and get it out to y'all as soon as possible. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm and that like button. Please stiff arm the subscription button. I'm all over the place. You see me looking around because I'm looking at notifications like, oh no, I see somebody's face up there. I saw like the Hunter Renfro's face. I was like, oh no, did he just get signed? Now I look stupid in this video. But it was just somebody else announcing that he already got cut and things like that. I'm all over the place, man. I'm trying to keep y'all up to date on every little thing. And so, man, I really appreciate y'all. Again, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button, because I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you stay tuned so you get a notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. I knew this video was going to end up being long. I didn't expect it to be this long, though. I'm not going to lie to you at all. But, I mean, hey, man, this is what I do as Rico with Street Scores. I'm always going to do in-depth dives. Again, I wanted to dive even deeper than this, but it probably would end up being like 3 hours long. Maybe I should have split this up into multiple videos, like each position of need, go in order of releasing them as far as biggest need to smallest need, instead of like doing the order within the video. I don't know, but let me know how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the points that I brought up. Do you agree or disagree with my ranking of our biggest needs? Do you agree or disagree with how I feel like we're more likely to address those needs, whether it be free agency or the draft or specific players for each of those? Let me know how you feel about everything. If there are any names that I didn't bring up, do you feel like will be great options for us? Let me know that. And any name that I brought up, if you just strongly disagree and don't want them, let me know that as well. I'm trying my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. As you can see in the past couple of videos, I've been trying to take time to do that. So man, make sure y'all stay patient with me. And oh man, I almost forgot, man. No way, I almost forgot, man. Shouts out to my dogs. We got George over there with a huge donation to the Cash App last night at around 9 p.m. I really appreciate you for that. And then also, shouts out to my boy, Red Black Indian. He wants me to change his name in the Pro Bowl sponsors. I got you, man. I definitely am going to change that. Thanks. Shouts out to you for donating to me, a big time donation just to tell me that, man. That's love. So, man, I really appreciate both of y'all for that. I'm sorry y'all mentioned. I feel bad for even mentioning this at the end of the video. I should have said it at the beginning. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to edit it and put it at the beginning. I'm not going to lie, because I really am thankful and grateful for all of the donations y'all be sending through the Cash Apps and through the super chat in the comment sections of my videos. I promise y'all I am coming back with some live streams. We're gonna do live streams reacting to free agency. I'm gonna do a call-in show for y'all to call in and give your opinions on what we've done in free agency and things like that. And y'all know when y'all donate during the live stream, I can immediately be like, thank you, shout you out and stuff like that. But for those of y'all that are donating even outside of me live streaming, not even expecting me to give you a shout out, I really appreciate it, man. I'm eternally humble. I really appreciate y'all, and I just feel like the least I can do is thank y'all and shout y'all out in my next video. So, man, I really appreciate y'all. I mean, literally, the Red Black Indian one came in like while I was in the middle of recording this video, and then I just lost my train of thought talking about something else. I forgot to thank you. I'm sorry. So I'm happy that I at least remember before I got up out of here. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.